Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Woman Lecture by Dr. Delbert Blair. This lecture was done around 1993. Around that time, the brother is now since transitioned on. He was a favorite of mine. I actually knew him, spoke to him, talked with him before. So, much respect to the brother. Something new that we're going to be doing here. We're going to actually start showing where all these people that you hear talking now about the black woman being God and all of this stuff, where it really came from.
Okay, first of all, good evening, good afternoon, or good morning, depending on when you got up, and I think it's afternoon here in New York, right? My cities run together, my time runs together. I don't even know. All I know is it's a beautiful day the Creator's brought, and I'm very happy to see such beautiful faces. Assalamu alaikum, and also hello. I was getting fascinated by the brother who had on the kippah and the Moorish scientist. My father was a Moorish scientist. My father's from Jamaica. And I spent a lot of my early life in Jamaica seeing things that people said couldn't happen because my mother was a conjure woman. You know what that means. So I was exposed at the very early days to the mystic side. One of the things that I understood outside of the Masonic leagues, and if there are Masons here, please don't get offended. I have taught Masons, okay? The Moorish temple scientists probably come closer to truth than anyone that I know. The truth has been so scattered throughout the quote-unquote diaspora till to get segments and get returned to what seems truth now sounds like a fairy tale. I definitely want to talk with that brother again, and I almost wanted to say, hey, don't call me up yet. I want to hear some more. I don't do that often. So as far as I'm concerned, with my limited fashion, the brother had a lot of truths, and I find again that the populace of New York has been very blessed. It's just that many of them have not taken advantage of their blessings. They have a lot of brain power here. As I always start to do when getting into my presentations, I don't like to call them lectures. Lectures can be boring. I hope none of my presentations are ever boring. If they are, then I need to stop coming here. I try to give a little background as to where I get information from or how I reach certain conclusions before I bombard you with facts and entertain you with the humor that goes along with my personality. I still find, I think education should be not so serious, especially if it's enjoyable, and I try to make it do both. So those of you who take notes and are bookworms and are researchers and so on and so forth, not all of this information comes from these books. Some come from pamphlets, some come from other sources. But in the main, again, these are books that would probably bring you the information you're going to hear until it gets to the very heavy psychic part. One is called The Redundant Male. The Redundant Male by Dr. Jeremy Cherfas and Dr. John Gribben and Cherfas. Another book is The Physiological Enigma of Woman. The Physiological Enigma of Woman by Professor Hilton Hotima. Professor Hilton Hotima. Another is The Great Red Dragon. The Great Red Dragon, again by Professor Hilton Hotima. The Sky People. The Sky People. Brinsley Lafayette Trench. Brinsley Lafayette Trench. The Star People. The Star People. One was sky, the next was star. By Brad and Francis Steiger. Brad and Francis Steiger. Man the Unknown by Alexis Carroll. Alexis Carroll. Let me also say that at the beginning, many females could save themselves a lot of physical problems by continuing what they did when they were very young girls, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, standing on your head either once a day or twice a day for at least 3.5 to 5 minutes. I start that at the very beginning. I give you your $5 worth at this time. If you want to make extra donations later, great. You can leave and go home if you just understand the importance of what I just told every female in here. Stand on your head once a day. If you can't do it now, have somebody hold your feet up. Invert your position of your body for at least 3.5 minutes. If you get dizzy as soon as you start for the first 30 days or 30 seconds, and then keep on trying. If you don't do it in 5 seconds, if you could invert your body for 3.5 minutes a day, which gets away from this tremendous gravitational pull on this planet and all of the iron and poisons that are in the earth, and give you a chance to reverse those cell structures and let the blood, just like the river Nile, run backwards, you'd save yourselves a lot of problems. Now, that's the end of the lecture. It was good talk. Also, again, I have a large group. It's not really so large. We have about 18 active people and about 7 very active people in the Meta Center. And then we have close to 200 members. I wish that I see them usually once a year during the so-called holiday celebrations. One of the ways that we raise money is selling the booklet of prophecies. Most of you have bought it. If you haven't, please buy it from me before I leave. It's $3.50. The booklet of prophecies. It lists the 34 prophecies for the United States. It's cross-referenced between Nostradamus, Edgar Casey, Mother Shipton, who was a black woman who lived in Louisiana. She doesn't get the publicity she should have. She was an excellent psychic and prophet. Paracelsus, and a couple other people, and then the Holy Bible. I do that because most of us are more familiar probably with that book than any others, although I do understand the sophistication of my audience here, so I'm simply not denigrating, I'm simply sharing. Wherever we found those things, listing a thing that seemingly was the prophecy once or twice, we listed it. We came down with all the things we could have said, the 34 prophecies, 4 of which are my psychic ability in effect, and I hope that they are good and standard as the rest of them are. I don't tell you which 4 because then you say, well, those 4, Brother Blair, I'm not going to think about. I'll just go by the old masters. Also, we have a special earthquake insert which shows the 20 most earthquake-prone cities and why the last time they had one and so on and so forth. And around New York, around Buffalo is listed. Also understand the prophecies said for these islands here. And understand that from 96 on, this will probably happen. You'll start getting in this year, 94, an idea of what's going to happen because everything that can happen will happen one time at least in 94. That means we're in for one heck of 1 year. It will people understand what we're coming up against, trying for one more time to let those pompous, egotistical maniacs become at least human and show some signs of spirituality. The books have already said they will not. If they do not, then it starts. Right now, these are warning timblors. They're really not even trimmers yet, they're tremblors. You haven't seen what nature can do when nature finally loses her cool. Today, I heard your president speak and say what was going to happen. Tomorrow, Bosnia, Herzegovina, and Serbs don't do right. Well, this has already been pre-planned. Already, the undertakings are not for the purpose you see. You'll find that out when you see those kind of troops in your streets in 1996 and 97, in the streets of the United States. They will not use the troops from here, they'll use foreign troops. The foreign troops will show you no mercy. Most of them can't even speak the English language. There are a lot of prophecies, and you're in the time for the fulfillment of those prophecies. I say, as the days seem to run by and quicken, You'll see time is speeding up. Some of you already have noticed that. It is not a joke. Time, as we understand it, is speeding up. You are going to be quickened. You wouldn't be sitting here today when you could be doing other things. You wouldn't have been here last night when you could be doing other things, unless there's a quickening spirit within you that needs food, the real manna from heaven, spiritual food. So, as always, and I'm not joking with you, I'm very, very happy to be here. I wouldn't do anything else if I could, and I'd be very sorry if the Creator did not grant me at least a subsistence and hopefully a good life in speaking to people and sharing the little information that I have. And by your presence here, you make my life worthwhile, and therefore I give as openly and as much as I can. Sometimes I get carried away, stop me. Usually on the question and answer, it all gets carried out. Today, I want to share with you what
for years. See,
Today, I want to share with you what was advertised as the Woman Lecture. It's either been called, in general, the True Story of Woman or the Womb Man Lecture. Already, the brother kind of took my thunder and gave you a punchline, so I'm going to have to see if I can find some other punchlines now. Because he was sharing with you again one of the secrets about the true creation of her woman and what a patriarchal male society has done to try and take her away from her proper vestitures. Females in general have a lot of problems with other females. Housewives in general have a lot of problems and distrust for the working girl and the working woman. The women who work with the husbands of housewives are thought of by housewives to be the biggest threat on the planet. Not the earthquakes and tornadoes, but the woman that the man sees every day and has to work with her. We find again that most of the secretaries, co-workers, and now executives and sometimes bosses are females who are ruling their men, and the men have to psychopath in order to keep their jobs. So not only is there a problem in the immediate nuclear family, but there's a problem on the job. Women scrutinize women very, very closely. The appraisal of a woman for another woman is such that I find men pale by comparison in their criticism or critiquing of either males or females. It takes a woman to tell you about a woman. But also, there is a bonding amongst females that I don't find amongst males in general outside of the sports arena and fraternal groups. It is a mutual benefit and understanding what suffering is all about. Now, it's terrible to say that all females suffer, but if you listen to some of the conversations, as I've been privileged to do so, and have shared with you conversations as I would act as a panel organization or moderator for panels of women, every woman feels in general that she is put upon or has gone through pain that nobody except another woman could possibly begin to understand. And one of such pains, of course, is the miracle of childbirth. I've heard women say there is no pain a man can endure that rivals that of childbirth, and yet I see women getting pregnant all the time and looking forward to carrying children. So I say something's wrong, you're lying to me. There must be a pleasure that comes with that pain that is undescribable because I wouldn't go through it twice. Somebody would get killed. So, not being a female, but admiring and loving the female, I say there are certain special things that you do and have that obviously you don't quite share honestly with the male. And so I've tried to pique your scenario by researching and studying you. Let me state also at the beginning that there are many ways now that women get on top of our society. White women, especially now, dominate our society. Black women try to dominate a society which has been usurped And I won't spend time with that because most of you are more than familiar with the history, so-called Black history, Afro-American, Kemetic history, interchanging with America. But I will say this. Whether it is sexual wiles or womanly ways, the woman usually gets her way in the long run with any male. It just depends on how far she's willing to go in mind or in body. But usually knowing herself, she can get her way. Why do I preface all of this first? Because it is now getting to be almost a crime to be a true female, to be a real woman. And those that strive to be feminine, whatever that means, and to be a real woman really catch it from others who feel that they don't want to be that type of female and a real woman. I say to you this, be what you have to be, and be it proudly, but don't be hypocritical. Do what you have to do, but do it with the understanding that your consciousness is as good as anybody else's consciousness. And if you at least do that, when you pay for it, good or bad, you will know why you are paying for it. I did research, and I start off very basic. And I looked into the encyclopedias and the dictionaries, and I got the following explanation for the following words, and I share them with you. Woman, an adult female human being. Any problems with that? Most of you agree? At least we start out in agreement. Womanhood, the time or condition of being a woman. Pretty fair in comprehension, understanding? You still with me, all right? Girl, a female child or a young unmarried woman. But then I also looked up and I found out in Teutonic times, I didn't ask for this, I just found it, the word girl meant young boy. Now that interested me. I then looked biblically and it stated, created from Adam's rib to be a helpmeet to man. And I thought about that, a helpmeet, and I said, how do they spell that? M-E-E-T or M-E-A-T? But since man is the dominant species on earth, and since man was supposed to subject and subdue, then the meats have to go under. Women is and women are the weaker sex. We all know that. Everybody is aware of that. And I'm going to read you some reasons to prove exactly what I just stated. I mean, I saw some turnings there, grimaces. You all are aware that women are the weaker sex, aren't you? We didn't stay in agreement past 3 statements. Some of you actually believe that women is not the weaker sex. It's going to be a long afternoon. Well, let me try to educate you as to why these are truths. Throughout the world, there are more widows than there are widowers. There are more women, 100 octogenarians and over, than men. What are you looking at? I'm telling you how I'm going to prove my statement. Just bear with me. The female body, on a worldwide consideration, retains the characteristics of youth much longer than does the male body. Can you get in the picture? Less or fewer women have hardening of the arteries than men, the incidence of ulcers in men, and again, most of the deterioration and the signs of age show less in the female body than they do in the male body. So you're just going to prove a point. There's more heart failure and apoplexy in men than there is in women. Women can usually hold their breath without deterioration of cell structure deprived of oxygen, and less suffocated than men. And women can usually endure cold weather on a general basis better than men and can adjust to heat temperatures when their thermostat works correctly more so than men. Are you beginning to see the picture of the proof of what my opening statement was? How many of you are still with me? Confusion and puzzlement. Oh, good. Women in general in higher altitudes, like in the Andes Mountains and so, can usually carry heavier loads than men because the muscle fiber is toned better and the amount of oxygen within the cell structures is greater than that of men. The female brain not only has a finer texture and more complex organization than that of the male, but relative to overall body weight, it is 1/4 pound heavier. There are fewer female baby miscarriages than there are male baby miscarriages. And during childhood, the female is mentally superior to male because the girl of 7, usually because of the rich thyroid hormones, has a brain capacity and a body capacity that dwarfs a boy in both mind and body. They're usually taller, more symmetric, and have better brain cohesion and function than does the boy. So now you understand that I have hopefully proven to you my opening statement. Is there anybody now that disagrees with anything that I said? I didn't think you women would. And I know the fellas that just said, what in the world has gone on with that nut up there? Bear with me, okay? But by the age of 12, or when what is called puberty sets in, most of those things begin to change. So much so that by the time the men and women reach 21 years of age, the women, in suffering so much mental, physical, and nerve endurance, has a hard time competing or goes one-sided. What happens between the time of birth, puberty, and maturity of the age of 21 is where this lecture really begins. What happens is based on one word, in effect, men. It is based on menstruation. Menstruation. Many times it is pronounced ministration. That is not correct. But one thing is, it starts with men. Menstruation. Menstruating women in general lose calcium, thyroxine, iodine, phosphorus, lecithin, vitamin E, vitamin B1, 6, 12, 2, 6, magnesium, manganese, iron, copper, zinc, and sometimes for some women this starts 2 weeks prior to the menses. Think about that. Calcium, for instance, stabilizes the nervous system. Phosphorus is found in all healthy, normal cells. Iodine causes the growth and maintenance of the thyroid gland, and this is why the thyroid gland in women tends to swell during menstruation. I give you another key, so you don't run off and spend all your money at the doctor's. I repeat that. That's why the thyroid gland in women tends to swell during menstruation. Science has proven that the birth of congenital idiots increases when one travels inland where the soil and the food lacks iodine. Iodine is also an essential element for the maturation and maintenance of healthy female cells. What is very interesting is that not all women on this planet menstruate. Also, not all women on this planet have ever menstruated. But all women think that all women do. Let me me also spend a little time with that concept. Most Hindu women do not, and definitely did not, menstruate. One of the last famous Hindu women to achieve prominence on the world stage was Indira Gandhi, who until she started doing certain things and making certain practices as she toured the world, readily admitted she had not suffered a menstrual period until she began to do these things. Had she been followed her religious undertakings, maybe it never would have started. Most ancient African or Kemetic women did not menstruate. Not Belkis, not Acacia, not any of the so-called queens of Africa seemingly did once they began to have knowledge of self. The Oracle of the Delphi, according to the Greeks, were a group of women who pontificated and led Greece to its heyday. It was not led by the warrior men, they did the fighting. The thinking was done by the oracles, and many of the oracles were females. They are said that the oracles did not menstruate. We hear a lot of talk about the Amazon women, the Teutonic women, the Gauls, the West African Watetas, the East African Bossamans, the Andambes of the Congo. Most of these Oceanic women and most of these Kemetic women did not menstruate. These women were the strong women of our history. And in many cases, they could grow to be 7 and 8 feet tall. That's why amongst the Watusi and the Watusi women, when they told you of their diets and things that used to be different, they have some of the most tall, or the tallest women and persons, in fact, on earth itself. The Old Testament said, and the ancient Hebrews said, that menstruation was unclean, and that a woman should be confined until cleansed of her issue. But understand again, a lot of that book was tampered with by a patriarchal society, and if you're not aware of that, I think most of you should be, then we have a lot of interaction that we could go through. With the advent of monogamy, and now I'm thinking about Africa, monogamy, by what we would call the Christian forefathers who wanted their church to really flourish, came the taught, learned sensation that menstruation was correct, menstruation was necessary, and was the woman's paying for her sins for having made Adam eat the apple, and now must also bear her child in pain and affliction. And many of you bought that, didn't you? I say to you that menstruation is not a cleansing process. It is only the result of the deterioration of the egg, unfertilized, and that men have perpetuated a myth that women collectively have bought, and I can at least begin to forgive some African Kemetic women because they didn't have too much of a choice. In their old habitats, in their old lands, many of them, as I say, were taught better. I'm going to now talk to you as adults, if I already haven't, and I hope again you will accept these things with an adult mind, and then on the Q&A, jump me. I'm sorry, talk to me, question me if you will. The whites is a street slang for a term called Leucorrhea. It is an issue, a secretion from the vaginal area which women sometimes suffer from. If the womb becomes catarrhal, has mucus, has a cold, the white is one of the results. The inflammation of the uterine lining produces, in many cases, menstruation, and many things can cause that, as we shall talk about. The fluids lost in leucorrhea, or colloquial on the street, the whites, are important vital substances, lipoids, alkaline lactate, natural sodium, potassium, calcium, plus brain and nerve foods in the form of lecithin. In fact, the mucous corpuscles present in Leucorrhea are presently hemoglobin capable. What do I mean by that? It means that they are capable of forming human blood carrying, oxygenating corpuscles. So not only does a woman then suffer the menses, but if she also has leukorrhea, she is constantly losing the ability to build life-giving blood cells, which anyone knows without that the body does what? Deteriorates. Some women are on a constant menses. And then you wonder why some women are very irritable, very agitated, anemic. They get dizzy and have migraine headaches and jump at the sound of a firecracker 20 miles away, which they think they can hear. If anyone suffered that kind of loss from puberty till death, I wonder again why women are not half crazy. There are some men and other women that say they are. I didn't say it. I say, faced with that loss, we could have a problem. I state that if
For all those who may not be following, the statement he made initially was he was going to prove how women were, stronger than men, so to speak. I'm paraphrasing. So what he's saying is, the point he's making is the loss that women suffer. If you didn't suffer this constant loss, what would you be, so to speak?
the menses was cessated, if it stopped. If the blood loss and even the alkaline lipase loss was ceased and stopped, then not only would women be very strong, and they wouldn't be intuitive, they would be psychic, but they also could give birth to babies without a man being anywhere around. And there is the key to your problem and your problematic solution. You bought into the coat lie, the white coat lie, the medical doctor's lie, which came about under a patriarchal system. If you start understanding the cadavers that were messed with in England and France at the turn of the 17th, 18th century, and the experimentation still goes on. In fact, they, by law, are given to the enthusiasts the right to practice. And the practice is upon, in many cases, you as females. There was a theory called the Ovid theory, spelled O-V-I-S-T, pronounced Ah. It was proven, not postulated, I repeat, proven by Professor Jacques Loeb of Stanford University, that the embryo develops from the egg alone and does not require spermatozoa. Did you hear what I just stated? According to Professor Loeb, you can make a developing embryo to become mitigated and go into first, second, and third trimesters of birth without the need of the male sperm under certain circumstances. The prevailing medical theory is one of epigenesis, and it says again that you must have the union of sperm and egg in order to produce and in order to get pregnant. Maybe. To start this and give it practicality, we have to go back to a basic concept that some people still are not sure about. I state that women had to have been created before men or formed before man, because you cannot get a man from a man, you cannot get a woman from a man, But you can get a man from a woman, and you can get a woman from a woman, and think about it.
And it just makes too much sense. For anyone who wants to automatically dismiss that, just again, just think about it, dog. Like, it doesn't make you not who you are. You know, it doesn't not make you a man. You're not gay. You're not none of that shit. But you have to realize, yo, you're part woman because you come from, as right now, what you know, you come from a man and a woman. So you're part man and you're part woman. Like, it's just saying, G.
Any problem with that statement, that compound complex sentence? I don't have one. This is what the old church, the Church of England, and under King Constantine and the Bishop Eusebius, the Church of Rome had to get rid of and had to change. The last honesty amongst Caucasian principalities dealing with Christianity and especially Catholicism came with the onset of the Greeks who broke away into the Greek Orthodox Church because they got tired of the lies that were being formed and wanted to continue with some semblance of truth from the Greek society. The last time when the Caucasians told truth. The male cannot reproduce himself, the female can. What does that mean if carried to the furthest extent? It means that if the woman also could decide whether she was going to produce a male or a female, the race of man could cease to exist, as we now understand it, as a double gender. That, at one time on Earth, was a tremendous problem. The universal cosmic egg theorem is that a cosmic egg was created and from that generated everything, and that in the egg still is the semblance of first creation. Things start from an egg, whether it be a hard shell finish or a little ovum attached to the uterine wall. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? Let's get a little guess on that. I want to have a little fun here again. How many say that the chicken came first? May I see your hand? If you say the chicken hand first, just raise your hand. Only 3, 4 people. How many say that the egg came first? 1, 2, 3, 4, about 6 people. How many aren't going to get on a limb and commit either way? You're just going to listen to the lecture. Okay. Well, in 1975, they connected a vibrational detecting device to an unfertilized egg. And they got a rhythmic pulsing beat just like that of a human heart or pulse. What is generally an unfertilized egg? I kind of share with you quickly from the audience. What's the difference between an unfertilized egg and a fertilized egg? You can get mate, no males around. Yet they have detected, and that experiment has been tried and tried again, some kind of rhythm or pulse within that egg itself. They also found in vertebrates, those that have a central vertebral column again, a spine, if you would, that on the phases and oscillations of the moon, that pulse varied, but was always even more intense. We understand that humans are the dominant species on this planet Earth. We are the masters, we are the greatest, and everything else is beneath us, right? Right. Yeah, right. The acorn, which has a seed, a phylum of vegetable and plant, contains everything in it that the seed needs to become a mighty oak, including a print on its lawn showing what it's going to look out when it matures, what it's going to look like. Isn't that interesting? Ever cut an acorn apart and look at it? I mean, some of these mutated acorns now that have been gassed and pre-picked, you can't tell anything from. So get the real seed of a pure born acorn, and what do you have when you cut it in half? Picture of a tree. I mean, that's somebody really blueprinted that one. They already said, this is what you're going to look like when you grow up. So that's just on a little acorn. Okay? Let's go to another phylum, an animated phylum, the silk moth. The silk moth reproduces and never mates. Reproduces without a mate. The lowly aphid reproduces without a mate. And as the ancient Egyptians tried to point out, the scarabus beetle, reproduces without a mate and can shed its skin and goes along every 7 years quite well. It dies when it does mate. And if you remember on the Ankh and the scarabus, you found in your Valley of the Kings, and you found again amongst the pyramid and on the Sphinx itself, that sacred symbol of the scarabus. They were trying to convey something. Most of us have forgotten or never knew what they were trying to convey. Dr. Edward Bischoff, MD, started this modern theory of epigenesis in 1854. I want you to jot on that date because people think this has been going on for a long time. It has not. That's close to the turn of the century. Dr. Edward Bischoff.
Edward Bischoff. I want people to actually look him up, and you will find out that that is actually factual. Around 1855-ish, 54 is when all that really became a staple of what is taught about reproduction.
Started the theory and the story of epigenesis in 1854. That is, that the zygote and the uterine development by union of sperm and egg was the way that humans get started. The first trimester after fetal conception. Before Bischoff's theory became accepted and understand, it was presented on a paper as a theory, not an accepted fact. Later on, males and those who study under males have made it a fact that
Now,
this is the way pregnancy starts.
It's a staple in reproduction.
For centuries, people before that had believed in a theory of parthenogenesis. I repeat, parthenogenesis, and it even created under Grecian society, which had adopted and stole from the ancient Nubian society, the Parthenon. The idea for the Parthenon was not Greek. The idea that a temple toward bringing in gods was already being utilized on earth, and parthenogenesis, or virgin birth, was acceptable and was your immaculate, wonderful way. All of your ancient gods, so-called, or avatars or presentors were said to have been of what? Virgin birth. Now we laugh at that. We lose so much in the vaginal uterine tract conceptory and bringing to term trimesters that there must be a better way. We have just forgotten that there was another way. In the year 1955, 4 prominent British doctors of medicine, and I like to use this amongst college students because when you say British doctors of medicine, then it makes it okay. Dr. Stanley Balfour Lynn, Dr. Bernard Camber, Dr. David Wine Williams, and Dr. A.E. Morant all studied some 10 classical cases of virgin births and agreed that all 10 of them were real, that in some way parthenogenesis, bringing to birth without the union sperm and egg had occurred in all 10 of those cases, barring nothing. The most famous or classical case of virgin birth was by Mrs. Emma Marie Jones, a German woman who during the height of the World War II, 1944, had been locked in her castle, a big estate, because it had been bombed and everybody thought that everybody inside had been killed. And so for 17 months she stayed in there. She was not pregnant when she went in. When she came out, she was 9 months pregnant. There had been no men in there. There is another theory, the August theory. The August theory, pronounced August, again, was named after the Roman poet and writer, again, of love-making and metaphors, and so Publius Ovidius Naso. By the way, I use him because he was a black man. Don't misunderstand. You cannot go to a so-called race of people and state whether or not, if they came from a certain country, they were black or white. All Romans were not white. In fact, most Italians now are mixed blood. This theory was proven by Imhotep. This theory was revitalized by Pythagoras, again about 2500 BC. It was scientifically demonstrated again by the American biologist, Professor Jacques Loeb, Stanford, in the 40s, and utilizing artificial parthenogenesis in biological labs, this doctor once again proved the old August theory was true, that the embryo develops from the egg alone and does not necessarily require spermatozoon, and that is the correct way. Here is the key. Hear it carefully. I usually speak pretty slowly when I'm giving lectures that are empathic. Please hear what I'm saying and not what I didn't say. Varied forms of energy, in the forms of radiation from any source, and including radiation from both the sun and the moon or other heavenly bodies, can produce hormonal, chemical energies that will induce in the female zygote, when prime, development of a female cell that will initially divide itself and proliferate through term. And any developing fetus therein will reach term, no matter what that term is. In other words, vibrations and radiation can start mitosis, division of the egg cell. That's the only reason that the sperm can also do that. It is not the sperm penetrating the egg that does it, releasing its DNA, Y chromosomes. It is the vibration of that sperm, because as you realize and you read, literally millions to billions of sperm cells die out and never make the cradle. What they do is to simply die out because their mobility, their energy level, their vibrational rate is not strong enough to excite the ovum or the egg. The one that does make it, after that, everything is over. Look how many it takes to do one act. Consequently, it is understood that it is the vibrational rate, the amount of energy or radiation that causes that, and the sperm cell is only one possible conductor of such energy. When we start thinking and talking like that, we have to begin to say, well, if that is the case, what is the reason now why many women do not get pregnant until they have a man, if you're talking about something that is so preponderous and so wonderful, Dr. Blair? I state you have to begin to go back into one of the true histories of our planet, and this is where you begin to run into the problems, the challenges, and I love the challenge. At the beginning of this phase, let me explain that hermaphrodites are dual sexed. Anybody who's hermaphroditic or hermaphrodite has both sexes. Androgynous means a male and a female part on the same plant. Oh,
I earned my bachelor's degree in cybersecurity.
undertakings in the plant kingdom happens in the hermaphroditic undertakings in the animal kingdom, and that has been referred to as parthenogenesis. Are you still with me? All right. On this planet, which I have heard estimates may be 13 billion years old, 30 billion years old, many things have happened that we will probably never remember until we are more than man. But the story runs that at one time when the planet had gone through its gaseous stages and changed from the mental plane to a physical apparition, that woman was the first thing to be created. The original people of Earth were etheric or ethereal. They had no physical bodies, for Earth was then not a physical planet. The people dwelled in the kingdom of what we would now call the ether. They were called Etherians. And Etherians, not having physical bodies, had no need for physical sex. Their production and reproduction had nothing to do with coitus or physical embrace. It was done on the plane of mind and manipulation of the substance behind matter, the same thing that still governs matter, the brain cells of a cell. As the atomic structure of our planet condensed due to what is called perturbations of the sun, as the molecules began to fuse together and elements were formed, Earth took on density, and therefore the creatures and intelligent life on Earth also began to become dense. What was once etheric, evanescent, ethereal forms took on more regularity, solidarity, and began to be composed of elements. And they were still dual sex. The elements did not form sexual organs, they simply formed a mass or matrix by which the thought forms could then interrelate and become egoic. In other words, the thing that was intelligent began to take on mass by pulling the elements of the planet around it, but it still had no sex. Intelligence, yes. Sexual apparatus, no. It's interesting that the word androgynous means having male and female parts on the same plant cluster, but androgen has been named by men as being the substance that induces or strengthens masculine characteristics, such as a male sex hormone. That is really hypocritical, okay, hypocritical, if you would. When this species, in its advanced state, during the ancient Earth times, began to form matter more and more, they were pulled toward mating, but they didn't understand what to mate with. And they really didn't care because they were not used to physical bodies. And in many cases, they mated with animals. Their animal stimulation caused the animal to go through term, and the animals were not barren, as you hear say about. The animals produced their babies. And thus animal man was born. The animal portion of their union followed the animal menses, which is covered by the moon. And therefore, like all vertebrae under the moon cycle, they're governed by the 28 or 27 and a half day actually cycle of the moon, and the menses started. The menses is a reference to the physical animal body that is now part of your godlike body that you used to have. It was said that the Jehovah governed all planets with moons and would take under their wing and tutelage all creatures now born and barren under a moon cycle. As the lower vibratory creatures are created to follow a moon cycle, and higher vibratory creatures are built to follow a planetary cycle, there is supposed to be a distinct difference in what they go through and how they are governed. High alkaline diets, enzymes, fresh juices, plenty of chlorophyll, oxygen containing foods, along with deep breathing and exercises, shortens the menstrual cycle. Did you hear what I just stated to you? High alkaline diets, freshly squeezed and freshly run fruit and vegetable juices containing enzymes and life force. Heavy chlorophyll containing products. Chlorophyll allows you to do as the plants do to some extent, become photosynthetic. You can change light into usable energy and energy into usable light. High chlorophyll containing diets, plenty of exercise, plenty of deep breathing reduces the menstrual cycle. A lack of the exercise, a lack of life-giving foods and meat diets produces the menstrual cycle and reverts you back to the lower vibration of the animal for the human that you are, the animal person. Most athletic women find a wonderful, horrible thing that happens to them. Boy, Blair, you can't get your stuff straight. Wonderful, horrible. What a way to put adjectives together. The wonderful thing is that they find that they don't suffer through the monthly menses, and they may even skip months and even have at the most a 30-hour menses. The horrible thing is they think they're pregnant or worse. That's a wonderful, horrible sensation. Women then, of course, as they have before, then go to the doctors to get straight. And they do. The poor, ignorant mother, please, mothers, don't get angry with me. Let me finish. Not knowing any better, suffers greatly with her daughter. The poor, ignorant father, not knowing any more than the mother or daughter, suffers equally and says, yes, something must be wrong. And they all run to the great white coats in the sky for direction and and help. Please bring it on. Please, my daughter has not suffered, gone through a menses yet as I have. Make her go through it so I can be proud of her and know that she is healthy. And the guy said, yeah, that's right. They know what they're talking about. And neither of them do. And in many cases, neither does the medical doctor under the oath of Prophecies that they suffered through too. So ignorance leads ignorance, and the blind lead the blind, and they induce the menses by ways that would turn your stomach, or maybe you've heard that of some of the ways that the present medical allopathic practitioners induce the menses in young girls who have not had a cycle, because they know if they have not had a cycle, that girl is sick, and they want to make her well. By barbaric methodologies, do you want me to spell it out, or can you imagine? Those prone lie-down tables which women help themselves strap into have induced more trauma that some women never get over, but usually on a 6-month basis they go for more. Not only sulfur and drugs that are caustic to epidermal tissue are administered internally to a woman, but solutions and devices are inserted that can even tear up the womb in the best practitioner who has loving tenderness on his or her mind. Some women never recover from that. And yes, it will bring on some kind of hemorrhaging, I guarantee you. The old ways, the folk ways, the dumb ways, using herbals to do anything you wanted to and magnets to do anything you wanted to, would be too simple, too simplistic for the modern practitioners of medicine, so they make it a tool thing. You have to usually come back twice a month for 6 months, and they get rich off of your suffering, and then you experience the final sensation, the final wonderful thing. You have a menses. Isn't that wonderful? That's because in ignorance, woman thinks that that is the only way she can be healthy, and the absence of which means ill health or pregnancy. Oh, how we have suffered through ignorance. Original female, when she wanted to bring forth birth, simply agitated the elements under her direction, under her matrix, and began to form self. First of all, as living beings, and this is the ancient legend when people were not born through eggs, and then later on, as she mated again with animals, had to go through the animal methodology of producing through living birth and through, again, excretion and term. All original zygotes are female when formed. I repeat, all original zygotes are female when formed. They later change. Usually after 6 to 8 weeks, the male fetus starts to secrete testosterone. Otherwise, it would remain a female. All males start off life as a female in the womb, presently in this moon cycle. Hear this now, it's going to start getting worse with each sentence. Bear with me. Sometimes a small quantity of testosterone is secreted, just enough to make testes form on the developing embryo, but not enough to utilize proper brain chemistry and pituitary gland balance, and indigenous homosexuality is produced. What did he say? What did he say? You don't want me to repeat that. I know you don't want to hear that again. Yeah, you do. I do it. It's gluttons for punishment, aren't you? If I go into the MDs, some of them. Sometimes a small quantity of testosterone is secreted just enough to make testes form on the developing embryo, but not enough to utilize proper brain chemistry and pituitary gland balance, and indigenous homosexuality is produced. It's worse. Birthmarks are the mental impregnation and decreased ability of woman to still mark and control the fleshly vibratory cell states within her body. In other words, if you are frightened by something, usually in your second or third trimester, if you crave something, usually in the last of your first, second, and third trimester, if you are any way involved with something that stays on your mind, you mark your child or fetus with that thought. Now, before you laugh at that, how many of you have craved the strawberries, which shows a lack of calcium and phosphorus and the need for iodine, and then you have a strawberry patch on the baby, usually on the left side of a boy, the right side of a girl. The boys usually carry lower and start higher, and the girls usually carry lower, and so on and so forth again. Well, just reverse that, because the boy's head is bigger, usually lower for the boy, higher for the girl. And the child is usually marked left or right, depending on its sex, with your thought. You're scared by a mouse, or you're frightened, or you think about if a mouse ever ran across, I'd probably think there's a little mouse marked on your child there. It begins to break up as the cells expand, as you can see it distinctly at birth. Or you have these cravings. that shows at one time you could mentally control fleshly cells, especially within your matrix and sphere, and now you don't know how to any longer, so it kicks in, but you don't control it. That is mind power, now at its most deficient. At one time, it was at its most proficient. Dermoid cysts are the undeveloped cells starting the first trimester of fetal development, and microscopic examination will verify that fact. You are budding outside of the womb. Most cysts are mutating cells that do not follow a pattern. Dermoid cyst is a birth in the cavity, what they call the operloom, that does not have a womb and usually results in a huge cyst that must be removed. Teeth, hair, and cell structure can be readily seen on a dermoid cyst. Fibroid tumors are the result of the vibrations budding along the reproductive organs and tract, but not being able to start the mitosis, and so they just act as little buds throughout the reproductive area, especially when meat is present in great degrees in that female system. You didn't hear either of those things either, did you? No, I know you didn't. Well, then buy the tape. The word conception means to conceive mentally. Look it up. The word conception, first IBID definition, means to conceive mentally, not to conceive in the womb. Take a deep breath. Now we get to the real rough stuff. You thought this was rough? This was nothing. Now it gets rough. Man descended from woman. Circumcision is the artificial means to finalize that separation, and when the race of man was having a hard time making it here, especially certain kinds of man, few man, the foreskin tried to cover the penis just as it is cloaked in the clitoris, and consequently, the male had to actually cut off this foreskin as he tried to become what he once was, a woman. The male testes is a woman's descended ovum now encased within the scrotum. The male penis is an elongated clitoris. The female fallopian tubes, named by Fallopius again in 1523, is nothing more than the male vas deferens or urethra duct, which is both of the fallopian tubes joined together, an amalgamation of the fallopian ducts. The male prostate, which males usually by the time of 12 to 40 have problems with, and usually don't even function well after 40, the reason why is now going to be explained to you. It is nothing more than an atrophied womb. And every man has the vestibular mammary glands that go along with it, and during times of pregnancy of a woman can lactate. And during times of the month can lactate too, especially if those mammary glands are titillated or excited. I know it's rough to hear it and take it, but you think about it, and when you find me wrong, then we'll talk about it. The bulbourethral glands of the male are equal to the larger so-called vestibular glands of the woman. It simply means that amongst the male gland reproductive is a gland called the orchic. How many men know where their orchics are? How many men knew you had an orchic? How many women know that you have 3 glands that you've never been told about, and one of them you've only partially been told about? That's why I listed as a third. Don't leave yet then. The female thyroid gland has 3 lobes. The male thyroid gland has 2 lobes. And the reason why the female thyroid gland has preloads is because she tries to store up thyroxine through iodine storage and is always usually craving it in a deficient way. The chemical iodine we get here is not the sodium iodine that she needs, and she's always craving iodine. The closest substitute is simply iron. It is not the substitute though. Seaweed and plants like chlorella and chlorophyll-containing water plants give her most of those proficient things. Land plants usually can't make the grade, and most of the women that take chlorophyll will find it's from alfalfa. That's why they're not satisfied physically in their thyroid production. Thyroxine is not rich from land plants, which also have chemicals within them. Hear well something I know no other white man or black man has told anybody in here. And then all you have to do is do the research to see if it is true. The other two female secret glands is one called the epiphyseal, E P double O P H O R O N, the epiphyseal. In good physiological guides and studies of physiognomy, it is between the ovary and the uterus in what is called the mesophyx. Yes, MESOSAPINX, the mesophyx. Look it up in your physiological text, or just go to a med store near a pre-med college, and you don't even have to take it out. Just glance through, look it up, write it down, leave the book there. Within the epiphyseal in the mesophyx is something called the paraphyseal. P-A-R-O-O-P-H-O-R-O-N, the paraphyseal. It produces seminal fluid and seminal secretions, just like in a male. Those glands, in many cases, are atrophied, and the eating of salt is one of the things that atrophies them, as it does the thymus gland, which is a gland of youth. Those glands reflect from the biblical cord. That's not what you call it, is it? I call it the biblical cord. And biblical is what it's supposed to be. I say that because it is through misteachings of a religion that sought to subjugate women and bring them under church control that the truth of these books and things that talk about it have been squelched and hidden. They are now called apocrypha. When a woman exposed to moonlight at certain days of the month or sunlight at certain days of the month can suffer again even worse menses based again on the amount of meat in her system and the thoughts on her mind. All animals with vertebra follow the moon cycle. That's why every 28 days, give or take a half day, they suffer the menses. It is the animal portion of woman that is pulling her down. The Godhead or lighter portion of the female is the one that still tries to go back to when she was an angel, an Etherian vehicle, and only took on mortal form to produce mortals on a planet under directions of the Lord God Jehovah. Now she's forgotten where she was, who she was, because the veil of Maya, the electromagnetic field, was placed around this planet, and she's been separated from her higher consciousness. That's why through meditation and prayer, changing of the diet and exercising, not only will the body become stronger and bring out the more higher cycle of the angelic form of woman, but will cause you also to begin to dream in color and understand who you were, because you then lose the reality of the physical body and go into the real illusion of the spiritual self. You still with me? Mitochondrial DNA is what's your allopathic doctors will bring on you and your geneticists will back up, and they really don't understand it, but I will tell you what they will tell you. Mitochondrial DNA has an opponent. It is called nuclear DNA. Nuclear DNA is a mixture of both parents' genes. Nuclear DNA is a mixture of both parents' genes. Mitochondrial DNA is inherited only from the mother and is altered only by mutation. And this may be what led to the original separation of races on our planet and the proliferation of the newborns, the mankinds. Let me repeat that once more to you. It is a very heavy proponent. I might be egotistical. If you haven't heard this, listen to it and go out and do the research. Two types of DNA that they speak about, mitochondrial DNA and nuclear DNA. Nuclear DNA is a mixture of both parents' genes. Mitochondrial DNA is inherited only from the mother and can be altered by radiation and even thought. It is very unstable DNA molecule. We're told that again, the X chromosome belongs to the female and the Y chromosome belongs to the male. And when you get double X and double Ys and things like this, you get anything at all. I will state to you that a woman has the menstrual ability to change the chromosome pattern of any DNA molecule, or did. Oh woman, if you only knew who you were, then man would know who he is. Since both were taken away from the homeland by which virgins were born, and from the identification in Nubia and in Mesopotamia and amongst the Anasazi in the underground realms of the pyramid, where the first earth woman was put on the surface to be tried for creativity. If we understood before, we would understand better the dream flashes when we begin to try to understand who we are. So much has been taken away, as I used to understand it, 96 books, and now I understand it from a brother last night, 240 books. But either way, the missing books of what we call the biblical book of the Bible, that if we had it all back as they did at once the library at home, we would understand who we were, when our gods and creators were coming back, and when the universal cosmic logoi would sanction the end to this foolishness on this planet. Let me state that 2000 is the year. The awakening has begun, and now women must worry about cysts, because as our sun puts out more energy in this summer, that's all you're going to hear about, women will begin to produce cysts like mad. And if you eat meat, you're going to produce dermoid cysts and go through all kinds of trauma, especially the lower the phylum of the meat that you ingest. Because the vibrations are low and the body must get rid of it, and the sun will work on it and will try and bring it to term, because that's why it thinks you ate the meat. Did you hear me? You didn't hear me. About to wind up, and I know there won't be any questions or comments, will there? Lastly, as we conclude this way out presentation that I don't know anybody is going to present other than me, so I'll stay around so you can ask questions of me, is simply this. Mankind, human, angelic man, and gods will be on this planet this year. Before, just mankind and human shared an innocence and an ignorance, and now they no longer can live with each other in peace. Therefore, as one awakens, one must go to sleep. Cycles reverse. We are in the midst of a dispensational reversal of what is called a dispensation and a sensation. We're leaving the sensory vibrations of the third plane and are going into the fourth dimension once again. Those that change will find the menses will begin to cease. So don't go running to the doctor to stab you, please, and pay him for doing so. But understand that a change in frequency is your blessing, and one of the curses will be that they will not get the money from you by selling all the devices on a monthly basis to supposedly the 5 billion people on our planet that are females. Understand also that if you work with your mother, father image, which is your natural heritage, as the angels that you're supposed to be, many other things will begin to heal themselves if you just go natural, meaning natural herbals, instead of drills and scalpels, magnets and crystals, instead of all of the drugs, the vitamins and natural herbals and the trees and the barks. And it's very interesting, if you're keeping your lawns in the summertime now, you have the hardest time trying to stop those daggone weeds from coming up again, and you will spend half of your monthly income either on your mortgage payment, your rent, or keeping your lawns pretty. Those of you who are fortunate enough to even have lawns. Well, you won't have them long anyway because the weeds are coming back. One of the signs of the time is when weeds begin to grow, man is going to suffer because the weeds are your medicine fools. Pick them now, dry them out, get the seeds, and live. It won't cost you a cent. Don't throw them away. When they throw them away, pick them up and don't let them put the dioxides and dioxazines and everything else into them. Get them now while God is blessing you. The manna is coming and you are burning it up and throwing it away. It's for free. Study your basic herbal guide. You'll see them growing in the streets. The Creator has not forgot you, neither has Jehovah. Understand who you are and pick them and store them now so you may live. And at least the women will not have to go through menses in the time of trials. The radiation that the sunflower carries will help you to develop a higher consciousness if you don't let it become poisoned by going through the wicked master's cultivation system and being resold to you. Grow your own. Understand again that as you develop a higher consciousness, the new life born to you will be the gods returning in a form that they will transform the earth. That's why these precious young are being fought over, but not by the nuclear Negroid family, but by the Caucasoid state. And you're giving your children up to the state right and left, not understanding you're giving away your gods. Your goddesses, if you don't understand that God has no plural. God is one. Those who are low in vibration think low in vibration, reproduce low in vibration souls, and will suffer through the pangs of karma. Those who raise their consciousness call forth advanced souls, their own bodies are quickened and purified in the undertaking. The male also gets healed in the undertaking, and the new soul can teach you until it becomes psychically closed by all the drugs and things this present false civilization will give to them. The blessings have never stopped. The intelligence of what once was a prosperous people was taken away. But don't feel bad, it was taken away from everything born on this planet. In conclusion, this time, like all times, is a good one, if we but know what to do with it. I thank you.